This is an open letter to Mary Louise Kelly from the NPR, of the NPR fame, and the rest of the Saint Society. Salute to the Saint Society. Here's the thing. I don't have a qualm with you. I don't have an argument with you. Almost all of my arguments is with the system. Almost all of my arguments is with the system. That's why a few letters that I've produced in these video formats have been, criticizing from the left and the right and the center, because all these sides have bad ideas that have all originated from the system. So here's the problem with the system of glorifying Shakespeare, which you have done. Well, I heard one of your shows that you are basically gushing, and so are many of your listeners. Were gushing over Miss Judy Dench and the other fellow and the Shakespeare and the whole, you know, it just makes somebody who makes people, a lot of people who know that there are hundreds of Shakespeare-like figures in other areas, in other tribes of your planet. If you really look, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Shakespeare-like figures have been produced in other non-British, non-pink skin parts of your planet. Uh, I'm sure Sri Lanka has a Judi Dench who's, if not better than Judi Dench, is at par with Judi Dench. Sri Lanka also has a Shakespearean figure in their history that has promoted their language and culture and done a lot for, its literature. But the point is this: you don't hear of those because you don't speak their language. You first have to fucking be able to read their language in order to appreciate the Sri Lankan Shakespeare. Translation kills a lot of the beat, and a lot of the. For one thing, translation kills the rhyme. If you can rhyme in one language, but when you try to translate the poem into another language, you may be able to transfer the meaning, but you will kill the rhyme, because it just doesn't work that way. Things words may rhyme in one language that they don't rhyme in another language. But my point is this: that the my issue with the system is the self-celebration. This idea that we have the right to continuously celebrate ourselves, blow smoke up our own asses, and say how great we are, how great Shakespeare was. And I am also British. I am from, I was Shakespeare's neighbor. That makes me special. The idea that you don't recognize there are, in hundreds of years of history of man on earth, hundreds of thousands of years of history, at least a couple of million years of history of man on earth, believe me, many tribes have produced many Shakespeare. But we don't know them because they didn't have the Gothenburg, and they didn't at their time, they didn't come up with the idea of radio and television and Hollywood in order to keep blowing hot air up everybody's asses. That, yeah, it was Shakespeare started it all. Shakespeare is, God's gift to humanity, and just a little under him is Judi Dench, God's gift to humanity. Because that's why we call her a dame. We gave her a royal accolade, and you're like, So that Sri Lankan actress who does just as good a job is, dies at the end of her life, you know, because she has to get into prostitution to make ends meet, because no, she wasn't promoted. Neither her language was promoted, nor her culture was promoted, nor her cultural icons were promoted, nor she was promoted, who was playing some of the characters in the cultural icons literature. So she dies, in complication with prostitution at the end of her life, while we say, oh no, this one is a dame. Every time I hear these royal pronouns, I have it, unconscious orgasm, like dame. Not me. Many people probably apparently do. They just, every time a British hears a sir or a dame, probably has an orgasm. But my point is this self celebration is the problem. You know why? The self, not that, anything was wrong with Shakespeare or some kind of self celebration, you know, enough to keep yourself alive, enough of self celebration that, you wouldn't commit suicide. That's enough. As long as you celebrate yourself enough that you're not willing to commit suicide, I think that's enough self celebration. Anything more than that becomes becomes too much self celebration of your literary figures, your historical figures, your historical achievements, celebration. Anything above celebrate yourself enough so you wouldn't commit suicide, that's enough. That's enough self celebration. Anything above that, celebrating any figures in your history and literature and current politics and past politics, too much of this celebration ends up self celebration ends up in exceptionalism. People start believing that they're exceptional. And right now as we speak, you can see the result of too much exceptionalism in different parts of your world, in Gaza, in Taiwan. And you keep promoting that Taiwanese are special in some way. No, they're Chinese. You keep promoting that these white people from Europe settling down in West Asia, that should be celebrated, because, right at the exact point of 3,000 years ago, they were the owners. They weren't the owners before 3,000 years ago. They weren't the owners after the 3,000 years ago. But we only will trace the title back to 3,000 years ago because we are special. God's chosen. You can't distinguish yourself as being special any more than calling yourself God's chosen people. The British think they're God's chosen people. Every fucking European country has got their own church, except France and Italy, that are still Catholic. But the rest of them, they all came up with their own church, so their church can tell them that they're special. You got the British church, and then you have the German church, Lutheran church, or whatever in detail that is. But the point is this: almost Orthodox Russian and Orthodox Ukrainian and the Greek church and this church and that church, this is self-celebration. This is intended to celebrate yourself a little too much. That we are not, we are Italians, we are not Greece. They follow the Greek church. We are special. And the fucking Greek think they're special because they follow the Greek church. And, you see the problem here, Miss Kelly. The problem is too much self-celebration when you only know of Shakespeare, you only have read of Shakespeare, heard of Shakespeare, you don't speak any other languages, you don't know, once you do speak well, at least a second language really well, once you are able to do that, you realize that, yeah, you've known another figure in this other language. So yeah, they're more or less at par. He's got some good works and he's got some good works, and you start realizing that this too much self-celebration is going to end up like Israel. is going to end up saying that no, 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 we are more and they are less. We celebrate our, and you know that because self-celebration gets ugly, real fast in a crowd. That's the whole idea of hooliganism and the crowds are dangerous and all of that comes from the fact that a crowd when they get together if they start celebrating themselves a little too much, celebrating themselves a little too much, they quickly turns into exceptionalism, and that quickly turns into a street fight in case of groups of people, or war in case of neighboring countries. A little too much celebration, and that's exactly what Victoria Nolan, the State Department, and the CIA did in Ukraine. Fund the self-celebratory part of Ukraine, which that's where the Nazis, you know, step into the picture. You fund their celebration, and you hand out cookies in their Maidan when they're a little self-celebrating too much, thinking they are different from, they're better than their Russian neighbors living in Ukraine, in those states that are majority Russian speaking. You think you're better than them, and you think your ideals, your church should be in charge, and your people should be in charge, and they start self-celebrating a little more too, and the two sides starts warring because of too much self-celebration. Self-celebration leads to ideas of exceptionalism, and they all start from ignorance. Self-celebration, too much self-celebration, starts from the fact that you don't know any other literary figures in other languages in their own language, or you have very little information with that regards. So you appreciate yours a little more than you should. That's the whole idea of, yes, although we're killing 30,000, we have killed 40,000 people during the past 6 months, but still we are the good guys. I would say that's a little self-celebratory. And you're rewarding that self-celebration of these European folks in West Asia by giving them more money. Are you fucking kidding me? You're funding their self-celebration a little too much. Don't you think so? Sort of like, okay, you killed 40,000 people, here is some gift. Celebrate yourself a little more. That's all comes from self-celebration, because these folks, these Ashkenazi folks in West Asia, think of themselves as exceptional. So did George W. Bush and Mr. Dick Cheney, and does Mr. Pompeo, and so does Clinton and Trump and Obama and Reagan. It's like this is all, a whole, you know, boatloads of self-celebration. Is it justified? Again, if it didn't lead to, if the too much self-celebration didn't lead to too much sense of exceptionalism, yeah, may have been justified. But you can't help that. You can't self-celebrate too much and pat yourself in the back too many times, and not become racist, not become too congratulatory to yourself, not to start dehumanizing others because you think of yourself so highly placed in the food chain that by comparison other humans move down the food chain because you have bloated yourself to the top. You have blown hot air up your own ass until you have reached the top now. And that was the whole idea behind James Bond. That's the whole idea behind that. It's like one of our gentlemen all by himself can save the world. That's the theme story behind every James Bond movie, was that just one of us pink skins from northern hemisphere is enough to, for most of the time, to save the world. This one pink skin goes into those jungles and those shed holes and does something amazing, and flirts with their woman too, and then saves the world. Look at us. It's very self-celebratory, and I understand why it's so addictive, and why it's so impressive, and why you guys like it so much. Because who doesn't like, blowing smoke up their own ass? Everybody likes blowing smoke up their own ass. That's how we give our life meaning, by elevating our culture, our genetic lineage, our heritage, literally heritage, cultural heritage, economic heritage, industrial heritage. We celebrate all of these. That's blowing too much hot air up your own ass, because everybody likes it. Who doesn't like to be elevated? But this elevation of self leads to devaluation of others. Don't say it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. Because, as I said, you can't elevate yourself. You literally can't elevate yourself, but still see other people physically. If you get on an elevator and elevate yourself, it's physically impossible for you to consider others at your elevation. You have done everything to elevate yourself. Why would you, why would you even want to see other people as equal to you, as having their own Shakespeare, and having their own Judi Dench? You can't do that. So, too much self-celebration brings about exceptionalism. Exceptionalism brings about dehumanization of others, and war, and lots of killing. Salute.